The Roanoke Home and Garden Show. My name is Chris Moore. I'm with Senior Remodeling Experts. For many years, I've been working with people to make their homes safer and more comfortable. And time after time after time, I hear people tell me, oh, I'm not ready for that yet. I don't want to make any changes in my house. You're not putting a bathroom grab bar in my bathroom. No way. And it seems strange to me that when there was something that would help people live more comfortably, they didn't want any part of it. And so I pondered this for a long time, and I began to realize that the main reason for this attitude was that people have a very negative image of what it means to get older. Everybody wants to live a long life, but nobody wants to get old. And people have this image that getting older means getting weaker and sicker and less able to learn new things and less. But yet at the same time, I would run into individuals like Dale Sanders, Graybeard, whose interview is in my book. The man is 90 years old. He's through hiking the Appalachian Trail. He's completed about half of it since September. And I had the opportunity to meet him on McAfee Knob and do an interview with him and hike with him for 4 or 5 miles. And he kept telling me, we're going downhill, we can go a little faster. 90 years old, and he's dancing around and just having a wonderful time. So what's the difference between the 90-year-old who's living life to the fullest and the 50 or 60-year-old that can't get off the couch? And granted, there are some factors. People get in accidents. People have conditions that happen. But as I began to do more research for the book, all of the things that I've read say that our genetics, the part we can't do anything about, accounts for only about 20 to 25% of how we experience aging. And the rest of it has more to do with our point of view, with our mindset, with our habits, and with our lifestyle. So as I began to discover these truths, I read a book called Breaking the Age Code. It was written by a Yale professor by the name of Becca Levy. And her research showed that by having a positive mental outlook on what it means to get older, we can add an average of 7.5 years to our life. 7.5 years. Just by thinking differently about getting older. And I began to see how our cultural narrative that says we peak at 40 or 50 and it's all downhill from there is so pervasive and so interwoven with everything that we see, read, and hear. And yet, we have the choice of whether or not we're going to subscribe to that narrative. So that's what Age Out Loud is all about. It's about us being proactive, us being intentional about how we think about every day of our lives. When I woke up this morning, the craziest thing happened. I was alive. Not everybody that went to bed last night woke up this morning. And that's something to be grateful for. I opened my eyes and they could see. I could hear. All of these things are gifts that so often we take for granted. I stood on my legs and they hold me up. I have a roof over my head. I have food to eat and water to drink. And all of these things are gifts. And this attitude of gratitude is such a huge part of enjoying life to the fullest. Because every day we have things that we can be thankful for, and we have things that we can complain about that maybe aren't the way we would like them to be. But we get to choose which one that we're going to pay attention to. So In light of this, and in the idea of being more positive, I'm going to ask you a very strange question. I'm going to ask you to think about what is the worst thing that has ever happened? What is the most difficult experience that you have ever been through in your life? For me, it was the day, July 31st of 2022, when my wife Barbara, 33 years, died of lung cancer. And that was just devastating to me. And in the days and weeks that followed, when I was trying to find my purpose in my life and trying to breathe, one day I was walking by the river, and it occurred to me, I had a memory of when we first got married in 1989, October of 1989, and January of 1990, just a few months later, she was admitted to the hospital with encephalitis. And encephalitis, if you don't know, is an infection of the lining of the brain. It causes your brain to swell. And your skull, of course, cannot swell. And normally what happens to people is their brain swells and they go into a coma and they die. And the ones that don't die lose all their short-term memory. Barbara had seizures, she lost her vision, she lost her ability to speak, but she got better. And it occurred to me that if somebody had said to me, back then, in 1990, oh no, she's not going to die, she's going to live 33 more years and bear you 3 more children, I would have been ecstatic. And so I realized that I had a choice. I could choose to be distraught and melt into a puddle on the floor because she died at 55, or I could be thankful and grateful for the 33 years that I had. And so, and by the way, God has blessed me with a wonderful wife, Michelle, and I'm very thankful to be back full of joy. But I'm going to describe to you how we can reframe. Okay, remember the thing that you just thought of, the worst thing that has ever happened to you. Okay, we're going to say worst thing. Okay? And this is you. Please forgive my lack of artistic ability. But the first thing that happens when this thing happens is that we observe it. We see it with our eyes, or we put red ears on you. I hope you're not offended. Or we hear it with our ears. And the first thing that we do is we draw a frame around this event. And this doesn't just apply to the worst thing that happened, but I'm using that as an illustration. We draw a frame around that. And everything that happens to you, even the worst thing that has ever happened to you, has both a positive aspect and a negative aspect. We can find some good in any experience, no matter how tragic. And we can find something negative in any event, no matter how wonderful. And so when we draw a frame around this, it creates a focus in our head. That focus in our head will then manufacture a belief. And if we focus on the positive aspect of the facts, it's going to manufacture a belief called faith. And if we focus on the negative aspect of that event, it's going to manufacture a belief called doubt. And most people don't think that doubt is a belief. They think it's the lack of belief. But faith is the belief in that the positive outcome is going to take place. Doubt is the belief that we're not going to achieve the thing that we expect to happen. We're not going to achieve the outcome that we desire. And so This belief then creates, we're going to go with red, creates a feeling in our heart. And that feeling in our heart, if we are focused on the positive aspect of the facts, that creates a belief called faith, is going to create joyful anticipation. When we are looking forward to something that we have been planning for a long time, it's a wonderful vacation, it's a chance to spend time with our loved ones, it's doing all the things in the latter part of our life that we didn't have time for when we were younger because we were involved in a career, we were raising a family, we were doing all these things. We didn't have time to do these things, to learn a new language, to learn a musical instrument, to take up an interest in whatever it may be. So we're having joyful anticipation because we're looking at the positive aspect of getting older. All of the wisdom, all of the knowledge, all of the understanding that we have achieved in our lifetime. On the other hand, if we're focused on the negative aspect, we're manufacturing a belief called doubt, where then our feeling in our heart is anxious apprehension. And this anxious apprehension is the way many, many people feel about getting older. They think it means becoming invisible. They think it means becoming not valuable. I remember my mother sitting in her lift chair weeping because she said, I'm useless, because she was no longer able to do the things that she had done. But nobody's useless. We all have value. And part of that comes from the way society looks at older people. In our society, we so often think of elders as a burden to society. Oh, the silver tsunami, and there's all these baby boomers turning 80 years old, and we're going to have to take care of them, and we don't have the facilities, and we don't have the caregivers, and oh, woe is me, it's going to be so terrible. As opposed to many more traditional societies where elders were revered. They were held in high esteem. They were valued as a source of wisdom, and younger people would come and sit at their feet and learn from them. And I think if we retained more of that in our society, we would all have to spend less time in the school of hard knocks because we would learn from somebody else's wisdom. So then this feeling in our heart, if it's positive, joyful anticipation, or if it's negative doubt, anxious apprehension, creates a function in our hands. In other words, the feeling in our heart will determine our actions. If we have the mindset that growing older is a wonderful thing, and we're very thankful for all the years we've had on this earth, and we're very thankful for another day to make a difference in the world, the function in our hands is going to be serving others. It's going to be doing something that brings us joy, that brings the people around us joy, and we're going to have a wonderful experience. On the other hand, if the feeling in our heart is anxious apprehension, we're going to become more sequestered. We're going to be less inclined to interact with others. We're going to be lonely. We're going to just experience a lack of joy. And just the awareness of the gifts that are in front of us is such an important aspect. And there's a story in the Bible that really illustrates this. Abraham and Sarah had been promised by God that they would become the parents of a great multitude. But they were childless. And the name Abram, before his name was changed to Abraham, means exalted father. So you can imagine him walking around in society and people whispering behind his back, there goes the exalted father without any children. And yet, here they are, and Abraham's almost 100, and Sarah's almost 90, and they've been promised a child by God, but they don't have any children. And so Sarah gets impatient, and she says, Abraham, why don't you get together with my little handmaiden over here and go have a child? And we'll help God out in making this promise come true. And so Abraham does, and Ishmael is born. And when Ishmael is about 12 or 13 years old, God's promise comes true, like it always does, and Isaac is born. And so once Isaac was born, Sarah began to be jealous of Hagar and this other child. That was her idea to begin with. And she goes to Abraham and says, Abraham, you got to get rid of this slave woman. So Abraham gives them a bottle of water and a loaf of bread and sends them out in the desert. And they're out in the desert, and when the loaf of bread and the bottle of water are gone, and it's hot out there in the desert, and they don't have any water, and they're thirsty, Hagar takes Ishmael and puts him under a bush and goes away a little ways because she didn't want to see him die. And she's weeping and wailing and crying that they're going to die out there in the desert. And an angel comes to her and says, Hagar, why are you weeping? It seems like kind of a strange question, Hello, I'm dying of thirst in the desert. But it then says that God opened her eyes and she saw the well of water before her. The well of water was there all along, but she could not see the water in the well in front of her because of the water welling up in her eyes. And how often is that like how we operate? We can't see the blessing. We can't see the provision. We can't see the gifts and the life that's in front of us because we're weeping about the things that we don't have. And so often, just like this worst thing we talked about, reframing it, not everything that feels bad in our life is harmful to us. And not everything that feels good in our life is helpful to us. And many times it's not until later and we look back and we saw how that time in the desert, that dry and arid place that was so painful and difficult at the time, was actually shaping us and making us into the person that could receive and could hold the blessing that was coming down the road after. It's just like gold being put through a furnace to refine it. Many of the hard lessons in our lives are there to refine us and to help us and to make us into the person that we need to be. So the main message of the book, you don't have to get weaker and sicker just because you're getting older. And that many of the experiences that you have in your life that seem the most difficult at the time can and will help you over time become a better person, to be filled with the qualities that you need to experience the kind of life that is worth it. So I would say just appreciate all that you have. Wake up every day, look for blessings, look for things that you can be thankful for, and make a difference in the world. We all interact with many people every day. And whether that's just a hello as you pass somebody in the street or a more involved encounter, we bring joy or we bring sorrow to the people that we interact with. We have the opportunity to bring a little bit of joy into everybody's life, even if it's just saying hello as you pass them on the street. And those opportunities are precious because it's so needed in this world. If you walk around, you see so many people who just seem to be miserable. They just seem to be just going through the motions and dragging themselves along through life. Life is so wonderful and so full of blessings. And I would just encourage each of you to remember that and age out loud. Don't fake life.